Welcome to Democracy with FP Wellman. I am your host, Fred Wellman, right here on the Midas Touch Network, wherever you get your podcast source. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, say hi. I tend to stay up and watch the show with you guys, so if I'm going to say up front, be sure to say hi. I love hearing from you. We've got a great show. I got an old friend to come on, which is my favorite thing to do because we're going to have a good time catching up with old times. Let's get on with the show. And welcome back. We are still on Democracy with FP Wellman. I am still Fred Wellman. This is still the place to be, in the right place. I'm so glad to have you. It has been crazy in Washington, and I say that every week, and I have not written it down because, to be honest, I deleted that paragraph and I forgot to write one down. So anyway, it has been a crazy week. As you know, the little silly games in Congress continue. They tried to kick out George Santos. He survived for reasons, which I'm sure we can discuss later. They spent 4.5 hours last night, Republican Senators Graham, Sullivan, and Ernst trying to convince Tommy Tuberville not to be the flying jerk that he is. They failed after reading 61 different nominations, asking for unanimous consent on each one, and he objected to each one, insisting he's not hurting military readiness, even after the Marine Corps commandant had a freaking heart attack last week. And so that goes on. So the comedy goes on, the stupidity goes on. In the meantime, good things are happening in the world. I'm thrilled to have a guest that can actually talk about those things. So without further ado, my friend Jeff Timmer is joining us, just known as Timmer. Just, I don't know. It's funny. I was like, Jeff, that's his name. I was just calling him Timmer. Timmer's leading political issue advocacy strategist, spent 30 years providing big picture counsel communications for corporations, trade associates, political. This is your official bio. It's really boring. Anyways, super official, big time Republican, former Republican in beautiful Michigan. In a past life, in a long past life, Timmer was the chairman of the Republican Party of Michigan. We met through our mutual work at the Lincoln Project, where he remains a senior advisor. Jeff, man, great to have you back on the show, brother.
I am glad to be here. I love this podcast you do. It's great to watch. It's great to see this catch on and become as big as it is.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me be part of it. It's a lot of fun.
Great to have you back. Timmer is an original coming back. He was on the old Timmer came on. We were still on call on that train wreck of an app where. So I think, Matt, you got to keep track of a spreadsheet, like how many call-in guests we're getting back in this real podcast that we've got now. So I appreciate you joining us. I appreciate you especially joining us in the early days when I was trying to figure this stuff out. Although anybody who watches the show knows I'm still figuring it out and I have no idea what I'm doing. But nonetheless, and you got your own show. I didn't mention your show, Republic If You Can Keep It. I should have mentioned that. Yeah. You've got your own show. So
yeah, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Republic If You Can Keep It. I co-host with the former chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party, Mark Brewer.
Wow.
We're in our third year of doing this. And so, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to get on here every week and talk about the issues that are going on and try to raise awareness about how important this fight for democracy is and how fragile, it is in this country and how scary the 2024 election that's looming out there a year from now looks to be.
Well, we get an eye out of it now. When the midterms were over, I said right here on the show, I said, they've got a really slim margin. The Republicans took the House, but it's such a slim margin and they all hate each other. And so it's going to be a complete train wreck and circus. But I gotta be honest with you, man, I didn't think it would be this much of a train wreck. I mean, I can't believe I actually underestimated how much of a train wreck the Republican caucus would be. I mean, did you see it being this bad?
Every time I think that they're going to live, or I guess fall down to my lowest expectations, they exceed them or de-seed them. I'm not sure.
I don't know what the term is either. Yeah.
But, I didn't think it could get more comical or dysfunctional than it was watching that 15-round drama with McCarthy trying to get the gavel last January. And then, I thought it was going to be some kind of circle jerk with Matt Gaetz and a couple of the contrarians who just hate Kevin. I didn't realize it was going to descend into what it was, but you could have easily predicted that it was going to go through the machinations, the trial and error that it did, because the negotiations to get votes had to begin at the spot McCarthy ended. He had already given away all the power and prestige and clout that position as speaker carried with it. And so whoever was coming in on his heels had to give up more. And how do you give up more than everything?
Right. Yeah. And he had nothing to negotiate with. Johnson, none of those guys had anything to negotiate with because the committees have already been given away. And, he already bought off Marjorie Taylor Greene. And so he was coming in with nothing, which is why they probably ended up with a guy with nothing. I mean, the more we find out about this guy, the more bizarre it gets. I mean, what do you think of this character, Mike Johnson?
He is definitely somebody to be concerned about because the term banality of evil. I mean, he wears this extreme, religion. His version of religion, his bastardized version of Christianity, cannot just be accepted as normal because it's not. It is far outside the mainstream of American culture. It's far outside the mainstream of the Republican Party. Now, there's a plurality or large segment of the Republican Party that adheres to this very far out there evangelical fundamentalist. I mean, this guy makes David Koresh look like a secular pussy when you get down to it. And it's just not normal. The things that the clients that he's advocated for, and this isn't just an attorney who's doing the work, defending a client because they're entitled to representation in court. Yeah. This is a guy who's chosen his causes to align with his worldview, and his worldview is very, very strange, and it's not normal.
No, it is totally out of the norm, and even amongst, like you said, amongst Christians, it is an extreme form of it. From the it just every day something new comes out, and it gets stranger and stranger. I mean, obviously, there's the story about the son he adopted when he was single. I mean, there's just some weird, and I try to avoid the more salacious stuff even on this show, but man, it's hard to avoid some of the salacious stuff sometimes, these guys, and the stuff he's gotten himself into, and he flew under the radar, and there's no way they did any kind of a vetting on the guy. They think they knew him, but we had a unanimous vote. I mean, what I noticed about, if you remember, I highlighted it last week in the show, that outrageous press conference with Virginia Fox, telling people to shut up. What I've been telling people a lot, Jeff, is who wasn't in that picture, right? If you look at that press conference, there wasn't, like, I'm in Missouri too, Ann Wagner, okay, who was big, she's not in the picture, right? Gates wasn't in the picture, right? There's a lot of people you would think would be in that little press conference that weren't there. I mean, it is interesting to me. I tell people the thing about this conference is to see who's not there as much as who is there, right? Yeah.
This is right out of the autocrats playbook.
Yeah.
We've talked about this many times in many different formats. You and I have, and along with others.
Or drinks an election night. I think.
The so-called normals, the normies, and the normies. They looked like they were when they said no to Jim Jordan. It looked like, okay, they found some spine finally. Had they shown this any time since 2017, we wouldn't necessarily be in this predicament we're in. But they're craven and they're cowardly, and ultimately they were servile, and they just got tired. They decided that the process, getting it done mattered more, not being victim to the criticism back in their districts. Congress isn't even functioning. They're at a stalemate. Yeah. They decided that making things work was more important than who was making them work.
Right.
I tweeted that day that he finally won. Those pundits in Germany who said, at least the Reichstag is working again back in 1932. That turned out to be a pretty fucking bad take.
Exactly. I mean, that's it. I mean, they just sought out a safe space, and now they're paying a price for it. I think that now you see, like Congressman Buck is leaving Congress and Kay Granger is leaving Congress. I think the completion of the circle is now there, right? I mean, they have finally completed the circle of the MAGA takeover of the Congress. And when you said something key, I don't believe that actually represents the whole Republican Party. I think that's why Donald Trump only has 37% strength. But having said that, that is now the face of the party. What does that mean? What does this say to you of where the party is compared to where we were, even when you and I were together at the 2.5-3 years ago now?
Yeah, I guess I want to maybe try to clarify my view on where the Republicans stand. There's, I think, a solid, you said 37, I would say about 40% of the party who will crawl across broken glass for Donald Trump, who will only vote for Donald Trump. Right. That's it. If Donald Trump somehow isn't the nominee, they will take their bat and ball and go home.
Right.
But there's another 35-40% of the Republican Party who are adjacent to. They're fine, they can go along with it. They're the appeasers. They're the enablers, and they don't necessarily like Trump, but they're willing to tolerate him today, just as they have since 2017. Nothing has broken their desire for either power or the policy outcomes that he will bring and benefit them with. It's like the German industrialist being bought off in the 1930s. Yeah, he's co-opted the enough where even in head-to-head races or polls now, whether it's against Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley, Trump is at 70+% of the vote in a two-way race. It doesn't matter whether there's a bazillion candidates running against him, whether there's just one candidate running against him. Trump is the 800-pound gorilla, and he's going to be the nominee so long as his aorta stays intact.
Right. Which is a question, of course, at all times. I guess my question then, which takes us to this next moment, which is, all right, we're looking at an election. We see this chaos in the Congress. We see the chaos in the presidential race, especially on the Trump side. We see the chaos that he's in court. I mean, how do you think Democrats should play this moment as they approach the election? I mean, what is the right play, you think, as the Democrats look at their strategies? And of course, it's obviously different things with a congressional district or a national, but in general, how do they play this?
Well, there's different constituencies to consider. First of all, they have to consider their traditional Democratic left constituencies, which is normal in an election, right? They're used to talking to those people. But a new and vital and maybe the critical part of their coalition are people like me and you, former Republican voters who want no part of, that's not my circus, not my monkeys. I want no part of that Republican Party anymore. But I'm not actually, at least in my case, I'm not actually a Democrat when you get down to matters of policy and ideology and in many different, but none of that shit matters to me right now when we're facing an existential threat to democracy. I'm part of a pro-democracy coalition, and the only option out there right now is Democrats. And so there's a difference in how they talk to that swath of voters. And, back at the Lincoln Project, we called it the Bannon line. Those Republicans who Steve Bannon said if those guys at the Lincoln Project can get 4 or 5% of the Republicans to vote for Joe Biden, Donald Trump can't win. Right. And that still remains true. But those 4 or 5% are not motivated by the same things that the traditional Democratic coalition members or groups are. And so the messaging and the messengers are very different and need to be. And so it causes the Democratic strategists, the Biden campaign, the DNC, and all the supporting super PACs and everything to really, I think, need to be careful with how they approach this. They've got to keep the enthusiasm and threat level high with their base, but they've got to not go so far with policy that civilian voters, people who aren't like me, who don't live and breathe this stuff, they're just out there trying to, live their lives and work their jobs and get their, manage their kid schedule after school. They're not paying as much attention to this. They just they want normal. They want to not be drinking from the fire hose of politics 24/7 like we have for nearly a decade now. Yeah. And so they have to see Biden as a normal mainstream Democrat. And as long as that happens, if they go into election day saying Biden is a mainstream, yes, he is left of center. He is a liberal Democrat, but he's a mainstream Democrat. I can vote for him. That's why they voted for Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan and Josh Shapiro and Tony Evers in Wisconsin, because they were seen as traditional Democrats running against extreme MAGA candidates. And if that remains the calculus for voters next November, the country is going to be in a safe place.
That's really great.
But that's not necessarily where we're going to be, because there's all kinds of complications out there, including Bobby Kennedy Jr., Cornel West, and our friends, not really friends at No Labels, who just today, Nancy Pelosi has become the most high profile voice against No Labels and what they're trying to do. And, in a theoretical debate world, we could sit and say, hey, the more participants, the better in a healthy democracy. We don't have a healthy democracy right now. Right. And I believe that we can't afford the Lord of the Flies where everybody gets into the arena and we just have this, everybody's swinging at Joe Biden. Really what it comes down to. Right. Any vote that doesn't go to Joe Biden, whether it goes to Donald Trump or not, if it comes out of Joe Biden's column from 2020, that 81 million, it benefits Trump. And that's where No Labels comes in. Bobby Kennedy is a threat, potentially. I mean, there's a poll out today that shows him at like 22% national.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's considerable. It gave Biden a slight lead, but within the margin of error. Yeah. And that didn't have a No Labels candidate on there, and it didn't have Cornel West on there. Yeah. So we need to start looking. The lens will clarify as we go through the next year.
Well, that's something I say a lot too. Yeah. I mean, I say that a lot is. And I love the history lessons. So you and I are both Lincoln Project alumni. You're still with them. So I was speaking to a group recently, and people are really freaking out about the polls and oh my God, we're a year out and we're in a really bad place. And I get the history lesson. Like, did you guys know? I mean, you can generally people say, oh, Lincoln Project was pretty influential, along with our coalition of pro-democracy groups. And I said, I said this group, I said, do you know when they were founded? And they look at you like, what do you mean? I said, do you know when they were founded? Like, no. I was like, December of 2019. And did you know when you heard about them? May of 2020, when they had the Morning in America ad, and then things got a little crazy, right? I mean, I tell people all the time, you forget that Lincoln Project's original budget was like $250,000 for that cycle. And of course, Morning in America came out in May. Donald Trump called them the loser project, and things got crazy. But my point for telling that timeline is, we just haven't gotten started yet. I mean, the not one vote's been cast. Iowa's not till January. I mean, it's easy to wring our hands, especially on the Democratic side. We love to wring our hands because I am a Democrat. I left completely, and I've embraced it because I think I was always a liberal, to be honest with you. But having said that, the hand-wringing caucus, as Jamie Harrison calls it, the hand-wringing caucus, is always hand-wringing. But I'm trying to tell people, look, we have concern. We have to do the work. But we've not yet begun to fight. Is that your perspective too? I mean,
yeah, and one thing I've noticed, because this is now the third election cycle that I've been working as an ally to Democrats. Yeah. In 2020 and 2022, and now 2024. Yep. And one thing I notice is kind of the locker room mentality, to use a sports analogy here, the difference between, I've been in Republican locker rooms for most of my life. Yeah. Now I'm seeing the inside and the game preparation for Democrats, and there's a psychological difference in the way it seems like Democrats have historically approached this. And when I was a Republican, we used to say, the Democrats are just really shitty at this campaigning. They really are. And Republicans, I say I still have in my DNA that after 3 decades, it's hard to break those habits.
It's been a couple of days.
Right. Well, we would win races that we weren't supposed to because we could get in their heads. The Republicans could get inside the Democratic heads and get Democrats to react and play defense rather than go on offense. And I see that tendency is kind of in the Democratic campaign DNA, and that's something they need to really work to overcome. It's a matter of how you go onto that field knowing you're going to win. We've got what it takes to win. We have to win. We cannot lose this game. Right. But there's the way they're approach. Many of them kind of historically approach this is, we might lose. Oh my gosh, I hope we don't lose. It will be awful if we lose. And it's accurate. How you approach this psychologically affects your strategy and it affects your execution. And it really does need to change.
Yeah. I'm so glad to get a new analogy. I'm going to steal from you because that's what I do. I steal all my best ideas. But exactly, it is about the mentality. That there's a game-winning mentality. That's why I had Simon Rosenberg on here a few weeks ago. I just love Simon, the Hopium Chronicles guy, and that's one of the things we talk about. Is like, we are winning. Polls are great, but look at the numbers of the special elections, and we're overperforming. The Democrats are overperforming by 12 points in every special election. Those are the polls that mounts. We're winning. Now we've got a big one coming up with Virginia and Jersey and other states next week, November 7th. It's next Tuesday. It's gonna be exciting to see. But I'm starting to hear the numbers are looking good in Virginia. Hopefully, it is. So, but that enthusiasm is matter. When you go on the playing field believing you're going to win, it's a different approach than wondering if you can stand up to the big guy. I think you're absolutely right on that.
Yeah, and you can't play the Super Bowl trying not to lose. You have to go out there and do everything to win. The prevent defense, you've heard the criticism in football and other sports. You got to go out there and try to run up the score and do everything you can to win the game, not worry about losing it.
Man, I love that. And it goes right into what I've been telling a lot of my candidates that I work with is people are looking, especially the Democratic side, they're looking for fighters. They want to fight. I use John Fetterman as an example a lot, but Fetterman in a lot of ways represents exactly what we're talking about. He said, we're going to win. We're going to fight. And he's raw. He's honest. He's real. They're not looking for these super polished, birthed from God candidates anymore. I think there's real room for fighting, but I see it again and again that the reaction to the messaging that I use a lot and when I speak and when my candidates speak is no, we're fighting. We're fighting for democracy. We're fighting for the real world. And then the final thing I say is to a lot of my candidates is going back to what we talked about earlier about the policy. Democratic policies right now are national policies, right? 70% of people believe in unions and their right to strike. 80% of people believe in universal background checks, or background checks are reasonable. 70% of people believe in a woman's right to choose her reproductive choice. Those are democratic issues, but man, those kind of numbers are bipartisan, right? So I do believe there's a place for us to say we're winning and then go on the field and just get through the 4 quarters to get our trophy at the end.
Yeah, well, and I definitely think those issues, they're not looked at, though, as bipartisan. They're looked at as there's this big partisan divide out there. No, there's a divide between how the elected Republicans vote.
Bingo.
Saw it here in Michigan yesterday. They're closing up their legislative session, and there was a bill up to, it was effectively a red flag if somebody has a domestic violence charge or conviction, and that they can't own a firearm for a period of years afterward. Right. And all the Republicans except 2 in the most vulnerable districts voted against this.
Of course.
But that's the kind of thing that 70, 80, 90% of the people say that's very reasonable, Republicans included, except the Republican elected officials, whether it's in Lansing or Springfield or Washington, D.C. And so these are covered by the media in state or nationally as partisan divide when they're not. And that's why I think you're on guns, on national security, on Ukraine, on Israel, on so many different things. There is a consensus that Joe Biden is governing from that is a supermajority of Americans. I say it a lot on Twitter. There are more of us than there are of them. Yep. We've got to go out there and make sure that we don't get distracted and play their game. The Republicans are good at offense. They're going to be good at trying to change this conversation. Like when Glenn Youngkin won in Virginia, he got everybody talking about critical race theory. And that's you need to. Terry McAuliffe back then, should have been countering. You're nuts. Let's talk about your position on abortion. And I know there was some. It's not as simple as that, but there's much more tendency to try to win on debate points. Like high school or college debate. You don't win this on points. You win it on emotion and how you connect emotionally with voters. And that's something is so critical to this process.
Let's take a pause there for our first. We got some great sponsors for the show this week. Let's go see our sponsors. Trees are a renewable resource, but not an unlimited resource. I mean, honestly, trees don't actually grow on trees, right? So every day companies are clear-cutting forests just to produce toilet paper. Trees and wood are amazing resources, but doesn't make sense to use them for a product we only use once and flush away. Those trees deserve better. That's why Real Paper uses bamboo to make their sustainable toilet paper. Not only does bamboo grow incredibly fast, because it's a grass, it can be cut, harvested over and over again, just like the grass in your lawn. So when you use Real, it doesn't feel like you're sacrificing trees or, look, I'm a tree hugger. I admit it freely. If you guys follow me, I hike every day. I'm out in the woods. And to know we're cutting down these beautiful trees for toilet paper, it just doesn't make sense. So Real, in a lot of ways, feels like an upgrade to me for my heart. It's always shipped free to my door. It's plastic-free shipping packaging. Again, it can schedule it. I can schedule it right on my right on the line. Subscription goes to exactly where I need it, when I need it. I never have to worry about forgetting to buy anything at the store. Real is partnered with One Tree Planted. So with every box of Real that you buy, they're funding like reforestation efforts. And if you've ever hiked in one of those places where they're putting new trees in, it's beautiful to see, and it needs money. So unlike other TP that cuts down trees, Real is actually helping organizations to replant our forest and to grow our trees back. So look, Real paper is available in easy, hassle-free subscriptions for an online purchase or a one-time purchase on their website. All orders are conveniently delivered to your doorstep with free shipping, 100% recyclable, plastic-free packaging. So if you head to Real Paper, I want you to go to realpaper.com/Fred. You sign up for subscription using my code Fred. You're going to get 30% off your first order and free shipping. So that's Real Paper, RELPAPER.com/Fred, or enter promo code Fred to get that 30% off your first order and free shipping. So let's make a change for good this year, right? Switch to Real Paper. Real is paper for the planet, and we're thrilled to have them a sponsor for this show. You know, I'm older, so heart health and staying healthy, especially when you have a family you want to be able to spend time with as much as possible, is so, so important. We all have a heartfelt reason to support our blood pressure. In fact, more than half the U.S. population would benefit from blood pressure support. So Super Beets Heart Chews are an easy and convenient way to support healthy blood pressure, and they promote heart-healthy energy. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Super Beets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. And with over 30,000 5-star reviews and counting, Super Beets Heart Chews are having their moment. Super Beets Heart Chews are incredibly delicious and so much better than any alternative supplements out there. I take my Super Beets Heart Chews each morning. It's really kickstarted my morning routine. After taking my Super Beets Heart Chews, I feel like I have more energy and I'm ready to take on the day. Super Beets is the #1 pharmacist recommended beet brand for cardiovascular health support. It's blood pressure support you can trust. Double your potential with Super Beets Heart Chews. Now, get a free 30-day supply of Super Beets Heart Chews and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com using promo code Fred. That's getsuperbeets.com and use promo code Fred at checkout. I hope you'll check it out. Thank you, Super Beets, for sponsoring our show. Thank you to our sponsors. Man, that's such a, before we left for the sponsor break, that's such a key thing, right? It is emotion, it is feeling, it is the winning mentality, it is the fighting for you mentality that and I emphasize this with a lot of the candidates I talked to. I was like, you can't get out there and give your policy list, right? Nobody, I said, I was in a town hall the other day and I said, you know, I went to combat 4 times, 2 of them as a leader of Army aviators, specifically flying across enemy lines. And I said, none of my pilots jumped into the cockpit and charged across the enemy lines to defend America because of George Bush's policy list, right? You know, that's just, you've got to motivate people. You've got to bring people don't walk away. They're not going to walk away from your speech remembering that, you know, the policies you came out. They're going to talk about the feeling of believing in what we're doing and believing that there's a better day ahead and there's a better country ahead. And you said something key going back to, let's go to Michigan for this second segment of the show. Going back to Michigan, you know, one of the things that we've talked about a lot on the show is how Democratic governors have a moment they can seize. You've got unified government now for the first time in, I think, a couple of decades, right, in Michigan, and they're using it, right? It's a slim margin. I believe we might be losing it temporarily, right? But tell me what kind of things that Michigan's decided to do that Governor Whitmer's taken her moment to do.
Yeah, for having the trifecta controlling the entire legislature and the governor's office is the first time in 40 years that it's happened. Wow. And Governor Whitmer, in her first term, when she had a Republican-controlled legislature, really, I think, set a tone for how you govern smartly. And she went out and looked at those supermajority issue. She didn't just try to say, okay, how can I only appeal to to my highly motivated Democratic base? She looked at that term as how can I co-opt as much Republican support as possible, even if it didn't translate into Republican votes in the legislature? She co-opted business groups, Republican voters, Republican thought leaders, conservative figures, and she ended up winning her re-election by a much larger margin in 2022 than in 2018. And with that, her coattails brought along a Democratic majority. And she hasn't, in her governing style, changed. She's she's a mainstream liberal Democrat. She's not, part of the more extreme, progressive, who wouldn't be part of the squad if she was in Congress. But she governs as that normal. Okay, we might disagree, but I think you're normal. On policy issues.
Right.
Republicans voted for her. A good 10% or more of Republicans in the state voted for her in the last election. And the issues that the Democrats are running on and pushing through, they've pushed through, had a tremendously successful year in the legislature with their majority, but they've focused on those supermajority issues. Common sense gun safety, common sense abortion policy, where you're not putting people in jail over abortion and putting up all kinds of hurdles to delay or impede people who need the procedure for any reason. They've focused on environmental issues. There are energy issues. They're passing a generational, transformational kind of energy package, moving away from coal fueled. Michigan has antiquated energy sources. I don't want to bore all your viewers. And one of the most, because of the way Michigan is on a peninsula surrounded by lakes, has a very unreliable grid. And huge cost, unreliability. They're making some transformational changes. You have the usual suspects screaming about this, folks funded by the coal and fossil fuel industry who will fight anything. People always fight change.
Yep.
But it's the kind of thing that a wider swath of voters will support. And so they've also done some very partisan things. But you mentioned, a huge growing support for union.
Right.
For unions. Right. Michigan, about a decade ago, had passed right-to-work laws. They repealed those right-to-work laws. Very partisan when it was first passed, and very partisan when it was repealed, at least in terms of the people inside the arena, inside Lansing, who were fighting for it. But most voters, and even after this UAW strike that's now concluding, you see the support. You see much more sympathy and support for the unions, recognizing that there is the Michigan is a great example. I mean, you can give the unions a tremendous amount of props for helping create the U.S. middle class. And, nowhere is that more evident than the auto workers in Michigan, historically. This is where strikes started back in the 1930s, and where labor really took root. And so there's a culture here that recognizes that in even Republicans can be sympathetic to labor. Right. That doesn't mean they agree with everything all the time, but that's where I think Whitmer has been very smart. The Democrats have been very smart. And that's largely the way Joe Biden has governed. Right. It's steady. It's delivering. It's normal. It's experience. There's a whole lot of things you can use adjectives you can use to describe Biden and his style. The Republicans want to have the debate, and the media wants to have the debate on his age because he's 2.5 years older than Donald Trump. I mean, the fact they would have been in high school together, who gives a shit at that age? They're both old. Okay, great. Would you want the old guy who's going to protect democracy, or do you want the old guy who's corrupt and is going to destroy democracy? Right. Seems like a pretty easy choice to me.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not to a lot of people. But you're right. How the tie-in is very much there. What you see is having Michigan, you see the national governance under Biden and the seamlessness. And what I point out to a lot of folks is the fact that Biden still got the exact same cabinet he started with. Like, not one has been fired, not one's had to resign in disgrace. I mean, it's so unheard of in our lifetime to see the same damn cabinet. But it just says about that steady hand approach that he uses that can also be infuriating. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it's a little bit too steady of a hand. But to his credit, that's kind of what you're seeing, and it isn't seeing the microcosm in Michigan and the fight they've got going there. By the same token, you're also a microcosm for the larger issues, like I think we talked about earlier about the sort of the normalization of violence, the normalization of the threats of violence. Because remember, during the COVID, we had armed groups approaching the Capitol there in Michigan. There was a plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, and that normalization is also a microcosm you're facing. And you mentioned, and when we talked earlier about, did you seriously tell me that one of those state Republican legislators honored the guys that tried to pull this? Or I'm kind of fucking dying.
Yeah, they have these, in Congress and legislatures, they have these what they call official proclamations that they give you, and a Republican state representative, somebody who was elected in 2022 for her first term, in one of the trials, there's been, I don't know, a dozen people who've been tried, and almost all of them have been convicted. There was a couple of people who got off, not because they weren't part of the plot, but because there was some arguably shitty prosecution and some technicalities that got these people off. There's a big difference between being not being found guilty and being innocent, right? So everybody knows these guys were part of the plot. They knew these people were part. Anyway, they weren't convicted. So she gives them this official proclamation, for I don't know what, being American patriots or whatever the hell these crazy MAGA ultra right wing folks. But it's this glorification. It's this normalization of the abnormal, tolerating what should be intolerable. It's the same thing. There were Republican groups in Michigan this summer who got together, and they had Kyle Rittenhouse and that crazy couple from St. Louis who was brandishing the guns during BLM come in, and they were the headliners, right? Glorification of killing and violence and guns. Michigan has had some high profile. We had a school shooting 2 years ago, a high school shooting, very, very deadly. The Michigan State shooting last year. It's been this normalization of violence. I remember back in 2020 when you and I first got to know each other early in that summer. It was through a group of people who came to us concerned about the threat of violence as we looked ahead to the 2020 election. This group of people who had worked in the intel community and defense community. And that's how, you with your experience in the Iraqi blue finger election, we got on the phone and did Zooms with election officials around the country, trying to alert them to the threat, the prospect of violence. These, it wasn't like we were Nostradamus, but these guys said they warned us of what was going to happen on January 6th. Well, those are the things we were talking about. And my fear is that slowly, this has been like the frog boiling, that whether it was the guns in the Michigan Capitol in 2020 to the kidnapping plots to going back to Charlottesville in 2017, January 6th, and now the wholesale attempt by the Republican Party to whitewash what happened on January 6th is this inch by inch glorification, normalization of violence, trying to convince people. It's gaslighting. What's happening before our eyes isn't happening. And I fear that 2024 is going to be much worse than 2020 was. And 2020 was awful.
Yeah. I mean, we hear the warnings, we hear the nerve, I call them the nerve-wracking things we hear, where they are saying there is a stronger belief now than there was before 2020 that elections aren't fair. They're always stolen. Everybody loses elections, says it was stolen. This nut job lady down in Franklin, Tennessee, who lost 4-1 now says it was stolen. But the problem with this constant refrain from the elected leaders and others is that there's people believing it. That those guys in Michigan who try to kidnap the governor, they believe this shit and they will act on this stuff. I don't know if you saw the guy just got arrested for death threats against somebody. somebody, I think it was Letitia James or it's just they are listening to this, they are hearing the dog whistle very loud and clear, and it is a call to violence, and it is worrisome. I only hope that we're better prepared than we were last time, but it doesn't take much, right? I learned my lesson in Iraq. It only takes one dude who's motivated with a bomb and can make life miserable for a lot of people.
And we know there's a lot of people out there, and there's a lot of radicalized groups. The number of people in this country who think and would admit, will tell pollsters that violence is justified if it achieves their political ends or if it prevents certain things that they're opposed to from happening. Yep. It's grown to an alarming number. The kind of if we were seeing that kind of radicalization happening in other countries, the State Department would be issuing warnings, terrorism threats. We'd be monitoring. We wouldn't be letting people from those countries in. We wouldn't be letting Americans go to those countries. Yeah. We don't recognize it when it's happening here. We look at it when it's happening amongst our neighbors differently than if it was happening around the world. But it's really not. And those people, if you step outside of the United States and look in with clear eyes, it's alarming what's happening here, and it's dangerous. And I go back to the point: we should be alarmed, we should be concerned, we should be, I don't know if afraid is the right word. We should be afraid of if we don't act. There are more of us than there are of them. If we don't take it seriously, if we don't turn out, if we don't get involved, they can win.
Yeah. And that's what I tell my audience all the time, and they're sick of hearing it, I'm sure, which is we can fight back, and voting matters, but getting involved in local campaigns, making sure motivating people to actually go out and vote and not just blow it off. Because in a lot of ways, going back to what you mentioned in Virginia, a lot of it was people just freaking sleptwalk. They didn't bother, and McCall ran a crap campaign. Let's be honest, didn't bother to try and motivate rural Democrats to come out and vote, so they stayed home. In the end, he lost by the margins because of the fact that he just simply sleepwalked in to think he'd be elected. This sounds familiar, doesn't it? And so we cannot sleepwalk into this next election. If people don't get the message by now that our actual democracy is in danger in a way that we can't even fathom today, I don't know what more I can tell, but there are ways to get involved, and we just have to get them there. And then we are in a global moment, right? Israel, you see already. You and I talked. You mentioned Charlottesville. I mentioned a lot in the show. My son-in-law was at Charlottesville. He was a National Guardsman in Virginia, still a National Guardsman in Virginia. He was there surrounding that stupid statue, which I love that they freaking melted it down the other day. That damn statue, which is nothing but lead ingots now, which I just love. People are getting mad at me online because I was like enjoying it. I enjoyed it immensely to see Lee's statue melted into nothing but ingots. Having said that we saw that both sizing of things then. We see it now on a global scale with the fight in Israel and Gaza. There's no nuance anymore, right? And that could get, when we take that to the next level here, things get dicey fast, don't they?
They do. And the thing to remember whether it's governing or thinking about how politics is going to, or how actions you take while governing is going to impact politics, because we live in a political world, and every action the White House takes is going to have ramifications in the next election. Doing the right thing turns out to be, good politics in the end. Yeah. And what Hamas did was wrong. What Hamas has done for decades is wrong. People like them need to be defeated. They need to be removed. And there's no way to do that without awful things happening. That's the unfortunate thing. I mean, I don't need to tell you, what has to happen. Yeah. It's awful. But that doesn't, at the same token, that doesn't, the Israelis need to, be careful in their response. They can't go in and kill 2 million people to get the Hamas leadership. And not that they would, but the ends don't always justify the means, but there's no way to wage war without breaking things and killing people. And unfortunately, there's going to be innocents who are always pawns in this horrible thing that's called humanity. There's no way around it.
Yeah, and it's not black and white. We live in a world of gray, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of people's like, you're absolutely anti-Israel or absolutely, anti-Gaza. Or it's just, and then it leads to some very ugly places where people like Brian Mast from Florida giving a speech on the floor of the United States House of Representatives, of a combat veteran, injured veteran of the war, saying there's innocent Palestinians is like saying there was innocent Nazi civilians. It's like, are you fucking kidding me, bro? I mean, it's just there are always innocent civilians. Okay, there's always. And by the way, we learned our lesson in World War II with this carpet bombing, and that's why we updated the Geneva Conventions after that war. The Geneva Conventions are dated 1949 for a reason. Okay, because we realized the horror of unlimited warfare and the scar it leaves on the world and the people who are fighting it. And I just the whole thing makes me a little bit crazy. I don't mind telling you.
Yeah, well, watching what's happening on some of the college campuses is just awful. I mean, watching, Jewish students be targeted. There's no justification ever,
none
for it, and none, and it shouldn't be tolerated. And there can't be Biden has, and rightfully, to his credit, has called it out, and they're doing the right thing. But doing the right thing doesn't mean giving carte blanche to, Netanyahu to go in and, take out 2 million people. And so, so long as Israel's war cabinet remains, the wide coalition it is, I think we'll see this war prosecuted as, I can't say as well as it can, as well as a war can be.
Yeah. I mean,
there's no way to sugarcoat it.
Yeah. I mean, I do hope so too. I've seen the effect, and something we used to say, and I'll say it here in this show. I worked for General Petraeus, and one of the things General Petraeus said quite a bit was that when we kill one, we create 3 more. And the point being that in an insurgency or dealing with terrorists, inevitably, if I kill one of them or I kill a family member of one of them, I'm creating more of them. These kids who are being subjected to bombing, indiscriminate bombing right now, are going to be angry too, and they're going to grow up to be the next generation. That's how this thing goes. So you have to be discriminate. Right. You do have to hear the laws. It is very, very hard. There's no easy answer in this. But the danger I worry with this execution of any war is, especially when it comes from a place of anger, which justifiable anger, it can be carried away. And we'll never. He used to say, his saying was, "We'll never kill our way out of an industrial strength insurgency." And that goes, I think, for this war as well. You simply will not kill your way out. Yeah, there's we say in the military, it's dying. There's more to war than just killing shit. Well, anyway, I think we talked a lot. Kind of a shitty way to end it. But anyway, having said all that, hey, what a great day. Timmer, tell everyone where they can find you. If they're not following you on X or Thread, I hope you're on Thread still or gotten there. You got to get there.
I am.
Great. Tell them where to find you. You can
find me on Twitter. I still call it Twitter.
I do too.
At Jeff Timmer. On Threads, I'm at Jeff Timmer1.
Okay.
That's JEFFTIMMER. You can find my podcast wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe, rate us, do all that fun stuff. It's a republic if you can keep it. You'll hear lots of national perspective and also Michigan-focused conversation. So if you want to hear how things are going in one of the existential states for democracy next year, listen to me.
Yep, and we'll put a link in the blurb of the show. Man, I'm so glad to get you back over here, Tim. I appreciate you. I love your wife. Tell her I said hi, and keep the good work. We really appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, Fred.
Talk to you soon. Cold turkey may be great on sandwiches, but there's a better way to break your bad habits. And I'm not talking about some weird mind voodoo or a wacky message board. No, we're talking about our sponsor, Fume, and they look at the problem in a different way. Now, not everything in a bad habit is bad. So instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? Fume is an innovative, award-nominated device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy and makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your Fume comes in an adjustable airflow dial and is designed with movable parts and magnets for fidgeting, giving your fingers a lot to do, which is helpful for de-stressing anxiety while breaking your bad habit. The first time I used Fume, I was shocked at how flavorful and fresh it tasted. It's easy to hold and perfectly balanced, and quite honestly, extremely fun to fidget with. The real wood material and sleek design definitely classes it up, and I feel pretty darn cool holding it. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard, but switching to Fume is easy, enjoyable, and honestly, even fun. Fume has served over 100,000 customers and has thousands of success stories. There's no reason that can't be you. So join Fume, accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Now, head to tryfume.com and use code FRED to save 10% when you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfum.com and use code FRED to save an additional 10% off your order today. Man, what a great show. Kind of some hard stuff to talk about. And it's a tough moment in the time we're facing right now. And why I'm so emphatic about what needs to happen in the Congress and what needs to happen nationally. You're seeing two really negative things right now going on and concerning our national security. One of those, of course, is the new speaker trying to be clever, playing his silly little clever games. I don't know if you guys know, Mike Johnson's, I'm already seeing the pattern with this character. He says, oh yeah, I'm into funding Israel. I'm into funding Ukraine. I'm into border. But what he does, then you get the bill, and the bill says, oh, we're going to fund Israel, but we're going to offset it by cutting the IRS enforcement arm as an offset, which of course causes, less enforcement means not enough money coming in. He's already saying, oh, we're going to support Ukraine. It's going to be a game too. And this guy, he smiles, that little greasy, weird, creepy smile, and we can't trust him. So the good news is, I think as we came to the studio, Schumer and the president said, you sent us a bill that's got Israel tied to IRS cuts. It's dead on arrival. It's not coming in this House. On the Senate side, I mentioned at the top of the hour, this fight over Tommy Tuberville's hold. It goes right to my biggest frustration. You guys who listen to the show, watch the show regularly, know the damn norms and traditions. It's always the norms and traditions. Now, I actually did some more research on this unanimous consent. Somebody said that the Senate actually operates exclusively on unanimous consent. They actually couldn't turn the lights on in the Senate without unanimous consent. That's how the Senate works. It's a very unreal place. But it was no big deal whenever you followed the rules. But then you've got Tommy Tuberville holding 300 military nominations. Now you got J.D. Vance coming in and saying he's going to hold DOJ nominations because of the weaponization of DOJ. You've got Rand Paul. I mean, all of these characters have no respect for your stupid norms and traditions. They have no respect for the history and the importance of their work. They're much more interested in getting clicks, getting money. And look, I don't hold to the idea that Tommy Tuberville is doing general flip. I mean, okay, the conspiracy is killing me. Okay, he's not that clever. He's getting a ton of money and love from the anti-abortion groups to do this. And more he gets, he's a very simple man. They tell him he's awesome. He goes, "I'm awesome. Oh, great, I'm awesome." And then he's going to keep doing it. He's not as clever as you think he is. He's not good at conspiracies. He's just a dumbass who's put himself into a corner and can't get himself out and refuses to do so because, frankly, he's doing great. He's getting all the big Fox News hits. He's getting a ton of money. I bet you if you check, when you look at his PAC records for the next month, there's going to be a ton of money went into his little PAC from his friends in the anti-abortion world. So there really is a moment where they're all not even trying to pretend to govern. And that goes back to these damn norms and traditions. So you're going to have to break a little bit. They're going to have to break the rules. You're going to have to adjust them and recognize the reality that we face a very dangerous future in America if we allow dusty old rules and traditions and norms and traditions to dominate where we are today, because the world has changed. Okay. The book that those rules are in is now an electronic on my phone, and it needs to change. So hopefully they'll wake up and we'll see that. Because in the meantime, those of us who live out here in the real world are really facing some very, very difficult moments. And it's very, very frustrating for me. So in the meantime, what can we do? Well, when you see people like my man freaking George Santos not getting kicked out, when you see people like Paul Gosar running unopposed, you realize that we have a problem in our Congress where too many of these people aren't afraid. They're not worried about being reelected. That too many members of Congress are sure they're going to be reelected, especially on the Republican side. You've heard the numbers from me before. 23 Republicans ran unopposed last cycle. 126 ran with an opponent that never even raised $200,000. We see it right here in Missouri. We see it in Arkansas. My friend Chris Jones, previous guest in the show, is doing amazing things down in Arkansas. We've already got candidates in almost every single congressional race where they had most of their congressional races last cycle went unopposed. Not this time. So I was just talking to Chris Jones today about that down in Arkansas. So we can do a difference. That's why I'm part of this Forgotten Democrats. You've heard me mention it every week. I'm the national chairman, which means I'm sort of a guide and a spokesman. And what we're trying to do, what Forgotten Democrats are doing, is raising money, and that money goes directly to candidates who need it the most. There's not going to be ads. We don't have it's not like the Lincoln Project. It's going to be an ad shop. There's nobody hired. There's like damn employees. To be honest, it's really just designed as a model where your money is pooled and given to candidates who need the money the most. Sort of crowdfunding it. It's essentially crowdfunding, and it's a great little organization. So if you want to learn more, just join our email list. You can text Fred to 33777. Super easy. That's Fred to 33777, or go straight to ForgottenDemocrats.org and join the community. For monthly donations, small donation, you're part of our community. We have Zooms, we have town halls, and we're really going to be organizing as the election year kicks off to put people to work for these great candidates that I'm hoping we can support this cycle. So that's my pitch this week. Had a great time talking to you guys. As always, you can find us on our channel. Our YouTube channel, of course, is the On Democracy podcast on YouTube. My official channel, I'm still on X/Twitter as FP Wellman. I'm on Threads and Instagram as FP Wellman Official. Find all you need. As always, we're here in the Half Coast Studios. Thanks to our friends at Vibe Media. Check us out. Find us. Leave a like, leave subscribe on Apple and podcasts and Spotify. Come on by the Midas Touch Network. We love being part of the Midas Touch Network, and we're glad to have you all here. In the meantime, keep up the fight. Check out, got some great videos coming out this week on Midas Touch in addition to the podcast. So look for our latest hot takes and hits on the Midas Touch Network with our friends, the Marcellus brothers, and all the great creators of the Midas Touch Network. I'm Fred Wellman here at On Democracy. We'll see you next week.